The bathroom mirror is cracked in the lower left corner from the night 8 months ago when Marcus put his fist through it and then told her she was lucky it was the mirror and not her face. She has looked at that crack every morning since. She has brushed her teeth in front of it, applied concealer in front of it, practiced the expression she wears to work, the one that says everything is fine, the one that has gotten so natural she sometimes forgets it is an expression, in front of that crack for 8 months without doing anything about it. Tonight, she is looking at it for the last time. Sarah Calloway is 32 years old, and she has not made a single decision about her own life in 4 years. Not what she wears. Marcus lays out her clothes on a chair by the bedroom door when he decides what she is wearing that day. And on the days he does not, she wears something plain and unremarkable, because plain and unremarkable does not give him anything to comment on. Not what she eats. The kitchen has a system. Meals planned on a whiteboard. Deviation from the whiteboard is a conversation she does not want to have. Not who she speaks to, not where she goes, not how she spends the 40 minutes between closing grounds and arriving home, because he tracks her phone and 40 minutes is already pushing it. Grounds. Her coffee shop. She built it from nothing. A lease she signed with her own savings at 27. A menu she designed herself over 3 weeks of notebook pages and taste tests. A space she painted with her own hands on a Saturday in October, because the contractor quoted 3 times what she had budgeted, and she was not going to let that stop her. She named it Grounds because she liked the double meaning. Coffee grounds, and the ground is something, a foundation, a reason, a place to stand. The regulars knew her name before she knew theirs. They knew her order. She never ordered from her own menu. She always made her own cup, and the regulars found this charming, and she found their finding it charming the best part of every morning. For 3 years before Marcus, Ground was the clearest proof she had that she was capable and real and present in her own life. The day she married Marcus Calloway, she thought she was building something bigger. Within 6 months, she understood she had handed him a door, and he had used it to lock her inside. It starts the way these things always start. So gradually that by the time you understand what is happening, you are already too far in to see the door clearly. He comments on her clothes. He suggests she is too friendly with certain customers. He tells her, in the careful tone of a man who is performing reasonableness, that she is embarrassing him in front of his friends with the way she talks about the shop, like it is the most important thing in her life. He opens a joint account and explains, with that same reasonable tone, that married people share finances, that keeping separate accounts is a sign of distrust, that he is hurt she would even hesitate. She opens a joint account. The car keys start disappearing on evenings when she has mentioned wanting to visit her sister. Her phone gets a tracking app installed while she is in the shower. He tells her it is for her safety, and she looks at the app icon for a long time before she decides not to say anything, because not saying anything is easier than the conversation that would follow. Her sister stops calling after the 3rd time Marcus answered Sarah's phone, and explained that Sarah was tired and would call back when she was feeling better. On a Tuesday evening 14 months into the marriage, she spills a glass of water at the dinner table. She is not going to describe what happens next, not even in her own mind, because some things lose their power when you keep turning them over, and she needs this one to have lost its power by now. What she will say is that after that Tuesday evening, it is never not physical, and that the specific calculations of an abused woman, when is he likely to be calm, what topics are safe today, how do I position myself in a room so there is always an exit behind me, becomes so automatic that she stops registering them as calculations and starts registering them simply as the texture of being alive. She visits her doctor twice. The first time she says she fell on the stairs. Her left wrist, the way she describes it, is consistent with fall and inconsistent with several other things her doctor does not say out loud. The second time she says she burned herself in the kitchen. Her doctor looks at her for a moment longer than necessary, and then writes in a file and says nothing. Sarah does not know, leaving that second appointment, that her doctor is writing everything down, every visit, every injury, every explanation that does not quite add up. She does not know her doctor has been building a quiet, meticulous, dated record of what Sarah's body has been through in case the day ever comes when someone needs to know. 6 months before the night the story begins, Marcus puts a folder on the kitchen table and tells her sign it. She asks what it is. He tells her it is a restructuring of the shop's ownership for tax purposes, that his accountant recommended it, that it is a formality. His lawyer friend, a man named Gerald who smells of cheap cologne and never quite meets her eyes, sits across the table with a pen already uncapped. Marcus sits beside him, watching her with a specific stillness. She has learned to read the way other people read weather. The stillness that means something will happen later if she does not do the thing he is asking her to do now. He does not read the documents. Her hand is shaking as she signs. She finds out 3 weeks later, from a supplier who calls to confirm the new ownership details, that grounds no longer belongs to her. The shop she built with her own savings, painted with her own hands, named with her own double meaning. It belongs to Marcus Calloway now, and there is a lawyer's signature on the document that means it is legal, and there is her own signature on the document that means she cannot say she did not agree. She stops eating properly after that, not deliberately. Her appetite simply goes somewhere she cannot reach. She starts saving money, small amounts. The change from the grocery run when Marcus gives her cash instead of the card, occasional tips from the counter she pockets before entering them in the register. Once a $20 bill she found in the pocket of a coat Marcus had not worn in a year. She keeps it in a tampon box under the bathroom sink, because Marcus does not go under the bathroom sink, and because the specific genius of hiding money in a tampon box is that it requires a man to first acknowledge that tampons exist. 7 months later, the tampon box contains $412. On the night the story begins, Marcus comes home drunk. It is a Thursday. He has been at a dinner with colleagues. She knows this because he texted her at 7 to say he would be late, and she immediately recalibrated her evening around his eventual arrival, the way she recalibrates everything. She is on the couch when he comes through the door at 11:30 with the particular loose-jointed energy of a man who has been drinking for 4 hours and has decided on the drive home that he is angry about something. The argument starts because her phone buzzes. It is a text from a regular, a woman named Claire, who comes in every Thursday morning for an oat milk latte and has been doing so for 3 years. The text asks whether Grounds is opening at the usual time tomorrow, because Claire has an early meeting and wants to plan around it. It is the most innocent text in the world, and Marcus reads it over her shoulder and decides it is not. She is not going to describe what happens next. What she will say is that it is the worst night yet, and that when Marcus finally passes out on the bed at 1:15 in the morning, she sits on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub and looks up at the cracked mirror from below and stays there for a long time. She thinks about $412. She thinks about her sister's address that Marcus knows. She thinks about the friend she does not have anymore, because 4 years of a man quietly cutting your connections leaves you standing in a room where all the doors have been sealed from the outside. She thinks about the credit card with his name on it, that he checks the statements of the same day they arrive. She stands up. She opens a cabinet under the sink. She takes out the tampon box. She takes out $412 and folds it into the inside pocket of her jacket. She takes her phone. She turns off a location tracking in 3 steps she memorized 6 weeks ago and never used until now. She takes a change of clothes from the back of the closet, where she keeps things he does not notice. She takes her driver's license and her social security card from the fireproof box in the office that Marcus does not know she has a key to, because the key lies taped to the underside of the bathroom cabinet. She does not take anything else. There is nothing else she needs from this life. She walks to the front door. She puts her hand on the handle. For one moment she stands there, not hesitating, not reconsidering, just breathing, just marking the moment, because she understands that the woman who opens this door is going to be different from the woman who has been standing behind it for 4 years. She opens the door. She steps outside. She pulls it closed behind her. It is raining. She has not been outside alone at 2 in the morning in years, and the city feels enormous and indifferent, and she walks with her head down and her jacket pulled close for 6 blocks before she looks up and sees the lights. The Voss Grand rises 18 stories from the corner of the block ahead of her, glass and steel and warm amber light from the lobby spilling out onto the wet pavement. The kind of hotel that signals money in every surface detail. The kind of hotel that understands discretion the way expensive things understand discretion. She stands on the pavement in the rain and looks at it and does the only calculation that matters right now. It is open, it is close, and it takes cash. She walks through the doors. The lobby is quiet at this hour. Marble floors, low music, a single desk clerk who looks up when she enters. She is aware of what she looks like. Rain-soaked, no luggage. The particular careful blankness of a woman who has learned to keep her face neutral in all circumstances. She asks for a room. She pays 3 nights in cash. She takes the key card. She does not know that on the 14th floor in a private office with a wall of security monitors, a man is watching the lobby footage. She does not know he has been watching since the moment she stepped out of the rain. She does not know he grew up watching his mother carry the same body language she is carrying right now. She finds a room. She locks the door. She puts the security latch across. She sits on the floor with her back against the bed because the bed feels like too much right now. Too soft, too safe, too different from everything the last 4 years have prepared her for. She breathes. For the first time in 4 years, she breathes. Cole Voss does not sleep much. This is not insomnia in the clinical sense. It is a particular wakefulness of a man who has spent 15 years in a world where what you do not know at 3 in the morning can become what kills you by morning. He has tried to leave that world behind the past 3 years, and he has made genuine progress, methodical and careful, the way he does everything. But the wakefulness remains a habit of vigilance that his body has decided to keep even as the reasons for it being systematically removed. He is 36 years old, second-generation Korean American, with his father's jawline and his mother's eyes and the specific quality of stillness that comes from a man who learned early that reaction costs more than observation. He runs a legitimate hospitality business on the surface, the Voss Grand and 3 other hotels across 2 states, 2 restaurant properties, a private security firm with 48 employees. Beneath that surface, there is a network that has taken him 11 years to build and 3 years to begin dismantling, and the dismantling is going well, quietly, with cooperation of a federal agent named Reyes who understands that clean exits require patience, and that patience requires trust. He is not a violent man by nature. He became one by necessity, in a world that has very specific ideas about what weakness looks like and very specific responses to it. He has not been that version of himself in 3 years. He is not sure he misses it. He is sure he does not want to go back. He is reviewing month-end security reports when his head of security, a former military man named Doug, who has worked for him for 6 years, knocks and enters without waiting. Flagging a guest check-in, Doug says, and puts a tab on the desk showing the lobby feed from 40 minutes ago. Cole watches the footage. A woman, rain-soaked, no luggage, cash payment, the desk interaction brief and controlled. But it is not the details Doug is flagging. It is the way she moves. The way she crosses a lobby with her shoulders slightly forward and her chin slightly down, not looking around the way tired travelers look around, but tracking, exits, staff positions, the distance between herself and the desk clerk, the specific economical movement of someone who has spent a long time making herself small in spaces where other people set the terms. Cole has seen that body language before. He grew up watching his mother carry it. In their apartment in Koreatown, in the years before his father left, and the years after when the man his mother eventually brought home was worse than his father in ways Cole did not have a vocabulary for at 9 years old, but understood completely by 11. He watched his mother track rooms. He learned it from her before he learned it was something worth learning. What room? He asks. 614. Move her to a suite. 8 or above, city view. He thinks for a moment. Send food up. Something substantial. Nothing that requires a decision. Leave it outside the door with a note. Have housekeeping collect her bag tonight and return it with her things laundered and pressed by 7 a.m. He pauses. She is not to be disturbed by anyone. If she calls the desk or asks for anything, I want to know immediately. Doug looks at him for a moment with the expression of a man who has worked for Cole long enough to understand when a question would be unwelcome. He nods and leaves. Cole sits back in his chair. On the monitor, the lobby is empty again. He looks at the frozen frame of the woman crossing the marble floor with her chin down and her shoulders forward and her $400 of cash and her absolute solitude. He does not go to her room. In the morning, Sarah comes downstairs. Cole knows this because Doug tells him, and because he has the lobby feed on the secondary monitor at his desk, and because he acknowledges this to himself without particular judgment, paying attention in a way that is not entirely professional. She is wearing clean clothes, which means housekeeping found her bag and returned it. She is moving differently than she was last night. Still careful, still measured, but with slightly more vertical in her posture. The difference between a person who has slept in a safe place and one who has not. She speaks to the desk clerk. The clerk responds. She speaks again, and something in her body language shifts from question to decision, and the clerk picks up the phone. His phone rings 30 seconds later. She wants to speak to the owner. Doug says. Cole closes a report he is reading. Tell her I will meet her in the restaurant in 10 minutes. He arrives in 9. He chooses a table by the window. Natural light. Clear sight lines to the entrance. No seats with their backs to the room. Because he is who he is, and some things are automatic. He is already seated when she comes through the restaurant door. She is up close. Someone whose face has been through something. Not in any dramatic visible way, but in the specific quality of composure that is not natural ease but constructed armor. She is 32 or thereabouts, with the kind of self-possession that has been earned rather than given, and she looks at him when she enters a restaurant with the direct assessment of someone who has learned that reading a room accurately is a survival skill. She sits down across from him without being invited to, which he notes. A server appears. Cole orders black coffee. She looks at the menu for a moment and then orders her own without looking at him for guidance or permission, which he also notes. Thank you for the room, she says, and the food, and she pauses. All of it. You are welcome. What do you want in return? He looks at her. Nothing. She holds his gaze with the flatness of someone who has been told comfortable things by people who wanted something and has learned not to accept comfort at face value. People who upgrade strangers to suites and send food and launder their clothes do not want nothing. I am the owner of the hotel, he says. It is my preference that guests are comfortable. That is the entire transaction. She does not believe him. He can see that she does not believe him, and he finds, slightly to his surprise, that he does not mind. He would rather she be skeptical than credulous. Credulous got her somewhere she was trying to escape. Their coffee arrives. He wraps both hands around his cup. She wraps both hands around hers, which is a gesture of someone who drinks coffee the way it was meant to be held. Not performed, not accessorized, just held. And something about it makes him ask, without planning to, whether she has a preference in roast. She looks at him. Then she looks at her cup. Then she says, "This is a medium roast from somewhere in Central America, probably Guatemala, probably a wash process. It is good, but your extraction time is slightly off. You are getting the brightness, but you are leaving some of the body behind. If you dropped the temperature by 4 degrees and extended the brew time by 20 seconds, you would have a considerably better cup." She says all of this in one breath and then stops, and something flickers across her face. The specific expression of a person who has just been entirely themselves and has remembered half a second too late. That being entirely themselves is not safe. She pulls back. He watches it happen. He files it away. "You know, coffee," he says, in a tone that does not make a big thing. "I own a coffee shop." A beat. "I own a coffee shop." He does not ask about the correction. He talked about the hotel instead, how he built it, what he wanted it to be, the restaurant's ongoing problem with its beverage program, which his current consultant has not adequately addressed. He watches her listen. She listens the way people listen when they're interested despite themselves, leaning slightly forward, and he finds himself being more specific than he planned because specific is what her attention seems to call for. Before she leaves the table, he tells her the room is hers for as long as she needs it. She tells him she cannot afford the cash rate for more than 3 days. He tells her they will figure it out. She tells him she does not accept charity. He tells her it is not charity. It is a business arrangement. His hotel restaurant's coffee program needs a professional evaluation, and she clearly has the expertise. He will pay her a consulting rate against the cost of the room. She looks at him for a long time. He holds her gaze without pressure, without performance, without anything other than the offer itself sitting on the table between them. "I will think about it," she says. She goes back to her room. She sits on the edge of the bed, not the floor this time, the bed, and she looks at the city through the window, and she thinks about a man who sat across from her and did not ask a single question she did not want to answer, who talked about coffee with genuine attention, Who made an offer that gave her something to do with her hands and her brain and her expertise without making her feel like a charity case or a project? She thinks about Marcus asking her what she wanted for dinner and then not listening to the answer. She thinks about the difference. She picks up the hotel notepad from the bedside table. She starts making notes about the coffee program. The notes become a full page. The full page becomes 2. She writes until her hand aches, and she realizes, somewhere in the middle of the second page, that she has not thought about Marcus once in the last 40 minutes. She takes the job. Oh, wow! He upgraded a soaking wet stranger to a suite, sent her food, had her clothes laundered, and asked for nothing. If this man already has you feeling some type of way, smash that like button and subscribe to Echo True Stories. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Sarah can actually trust Cole? Because she is not sure yet either. Share this video and turn on notifications. Next chapter is about to get intense. The hotel restaurant's coffee operation is, professionally speaking, a moderate disaster. Not in the dramatic sense. The equipment is good, the suppliers are reputable, the staff are willing. The disaster is in the details. A grind setting that has not been adjusted in 3 months, a milk steaming technique that is producing texture without temperature, a cold brew program that someone started with enthusiasm and abandoned halfway through a process change, so that what is currently being served is neither what it was nor what it was supposed to become. Sarah spends the first morning doing nothing but tasting and taking notes, moving through the operation with the quiet authority of someone who has done this in her own space for years, and is not remotely intimidated by doing it in someone else's. By the afternoon, she has a 12-point assessment document and a prioritized action plan. She slides it under Cole's office door because she does not know whether to knock, and decides that the work speaking for itself is better than the uncertainty of the interaction. He appears in the restaurant 20 minutes later with a document in his hand and reads out point 7, which concerns the supplier relationship and suggests a renegotiation of the current contract terms based on volume and exclusivity, and asks her how she would approach the conversation. She tells him, in detail, with specific language in a suggested opening position, and a fallback that protects the hotel's leverage. He listens to all of it. Then he says, "Can you start tomorrow?" She has already started. The days settle into a shape that is entirely new to her. Not because the work is new, the work is the most familiar thing she has touched in years, but because the shape of the day is hers. She wakes when she wakes. She goes to the restaurant when she is ready. Cole's staff follow her direction without the particular sideways deference of people waiting to check with someone else before they actually do what she asks. Nobody monitors how long she takes at lunch. Nobody asks where she is going when she takes the elevator. She takes long showers. She orders room service at 10 at night and eats it in bed, watching whatever she wants on the television. She sits at the window for an hour one morning doing nothing at all, just looking at the city, just being present in a body that belongs to her, just breathing. And she does not have to account for the hour to anyone. It is the most ordinary freedom, and it undoes her completely. Cole gives her space with a deliberateness she recognizes as intentional. He does not hover. He does not appear in a restaurant every hour to check on her progress or be seen checking. He communicates through brief notes or brief conversations that are always substantive and never prying. He asks about the coffee program. He does not ask about her. They have coffee together every morning. This begins as a professional check-in, 10 minutes to go through the day's priorities, and becomes something that stretches to 30 and then 45 minutes without either of them addressing the stretching. He talks about the hotel with a specificity she matches. She talks about coffee with a depth that she has not been able to exercise in years, because Marcus found her expertise embarrassing in company and tedious in private, and Cole finds it. She can tell she has learned to read attention very accurately, genuinely interesting. On the 4th morning, he says something dry and unexpected about the city's food criticism scene, and she laughs. It is the full laugh, the real one, not the performed version she keeps for social situations. It comes out before she can manage it, and she hears it and stops, because the sound of her own unmanaged laugh is unfamiliar enough to be startling, like hearing a song you love before a long time away. Cole does not make it a thing. He continues the conversation, but she catches in the moment before he continues the very brief expression of a man who has just seen something he was not expecting and has decided to treat it carefully. She thinks about that expression for the rest of the day. He has a security detail. She notices this on day 2, identifies 3 of them by day 3, and by day 4 has mapped the pattern well enough to know that they are present without being intrusive in a way that has been specifically designed. This tells her 2 things: that Cole has enemies, and that he has thought carefully about how to exist in the world despite them. She does not ask about it. On the 6th day, Marcus finds her. He does not track her phone. She disabled that 3 steps 7 days ago, and the steps have held. What he does instead is more methodical and more frightening in its way. He goes through their joint bank account and reconstructs the cash withdrawal history. 7 months of small amounts, each one unremarkable alone, together a pattern that tells a story. He pulls the location history from the joint account ATM withdrawals and maps the radius. Then he hires a private investigator and gives him a description and a radius and a simple instruction: find her. The Vos Grand is the 6th hotel on the investigator's list. Marcus walks through the lobby doors at 11 in the morning in a pressed shirt with a handful of white tulips, her favorite flower, which he has never once in 4 years purchased without an audience to witness the purchasing. He performs concern for the doorman, who holds the door. He performs worry for the couple near the elevator, who glance at the flowers. He reaches the front desk with the expression of a devoted husband beside himself with relief and asks for his wife's room number as a welfare matter. The desk clerk does not give it to him. The desk clerk, per standing instruction from Doug, per standing instruction from Cole, picks up the phone instead. Cole is in the lobby in 4 minutes. He comes from the elevator in a dark jacket, unhurried, which is how he approaches everything, and he introduces himself to Marcus as the hotel owner with the neutral courtesy of a man who keeps all his cards face down until he needs them. He explains the hotel's guest privacy policy. He says that if Mrs. Calloway wishes to see her husband, she will contact him directly. He says this is the hotel's standard policy and that he is welcome to leave a contact number at the desk. Marcus smiles. It is the smile of a man who has decided that charm is the first tool, and that if charm does not work, there are other tools. He says he just wants to make sure his wife is safe. He says he has been worried sick. He says surely the hotel owner understands a husband concern. Cole looks at Marcus. He does not look at him with hostility. He looks at him with the specific flatness of a man who has spent 15 years in a world full of people performing one thing while meaning another, and who is very good at reading the gap between the performance and the meaning, and who does not like what he is reading in Marcus Calloway's face. Your wife will reach out when she is ready, Cole says. Until then, the desk will take your contact information. He does not gesture to the security team. He does not need to. The 2 men who have repositioned themselves in Marcus's peripheral vision do that without being asked, and Marcus reads a room the way men like Marcus read rooms. Quickly, accurately, with a specific recalibration of a bully who has encountered something he cannot immediately calculate the dimensions of. He leaves the contact number. He leaves the lobby. He does not leave without one backward glance at Cole that carries a message Cole receives clearly and files away without expression. Cole goes to the 11th floor. He knocks on Sarah's door. She opens it and looks at his face, and she knows immediately. People who have spent years reading the faces of people who are about to tell them something difficult develop an accuracy that is almost physiological. She feels it in her chest before he says a word. She does not cry. She steps back and lets him in and sits on the edge of bed with her hands very still in her lap. And he sits in the chair across from her and tells her what happened. He tells her all of it, how Marcus found her, the bank account reconstruction, the investigator, the lobby. He tells her without softening it because he understands instinctively, from 45 minutes of morning coffee and 4 days of watching her work, that she is a person who needs the actual information and not the managed version. When he finishes, she is quiet for a moment. How did he know about the cash withdrawals? She says, and then answers her own question before he can. He has always had access to the joint account. I knew that. I thought the amounts were small enough. She stops. I underestimated how much he was paying attention. He hired a professional. Cole says, the amounts were not the issue. The pattern was. She nods slowly. Then she looks up at him. You came up here immediately. Yes. You did not have to do that. I know. She looks at him. This careful, Still man who has given her a room and a job, and a corridor with no one monitoring how long she takes. And she asks the question she has been holding since the morning they met over coffee. "Do you want to tell me what you are running from?" He asked her then. She looks at him now and says, "Do you want to tell me who you really are?" He is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "Yes, but not tonight. Tonight I need you to know that you are safe here, and that he is not going to reach you in this building." He pauses. "Tomorrow I will answer your question." She looks at him for a long time. Then she nods. He stands to leave. At the door he stops. "The pattern in the account," he says. "You were saving that money for a long time. 7 months. You were planning this." "I was preparing." She says, "There is a difference. Planning means you know when. Preparing means you are ready when you finally decide." He looks at her for a moment. "You decided?" "Yes," she says. "I decided." He leaves. She locks the door. Both locks, the security latch, and she sits at the window and looks at the city and thinks about the difference between planning and preparing. And she thinks that she has been preparing for longer than 7 months, longer than she knew, and that the decision she made at 2 a.m. in front of a cracked bathroom mirror was not the beginning of anything, but the end of the very long preparation. She thinks about that and she feels, underneath the fear of Marcus finding her, something that takes her a moment to name. It is something like solid ground. He comes to the restaurant at 7 the next morning. She is already there. She has been there since 6:30. Because sleeping until an alarm is still something her body does not entirely trust. And because the restaurant in the early morning before the staff arrives is her favorite version of the day, quiet and hers. The equipment warming. The smell of the first brew settling into room like a declaration that the day is beginning. She has made 2 cups by the time Cole comes through the door. She pushes one across the counter. Without looking up, he sits on a stool across from her and wraps his hand around the cup, and she thinks, not for the first time, that he holds coffee the way she does. Not as a prop, just as a thing. "You said you would answer my question," she says. "I will." He takes a drink, sets the cup down, looks at her directly in the way she has come to understand means he is about to say something he is not going to qualify. "But first I need to ask you one. The coffee shop transfer, the documents Marcus had you sign, was the signing witnessed by an independent attorney? Someone you chose?" She looks at him. "No, his friend, a man named Gerald. I did not have anyone of my own." Something in Cole's jaw sets. Not dramatically. Just a small specific shift of a man processing something with more feeling than he is going to display. He takes out his phone and makes 2 calls. The first is to his attorney, a woman named Sandra Park, who answers on the second ring and speaks in the clipped, efficient tone of someone who has been called early in the morning before and knows it means something requires moving quickly. Cole gives her the broad outlines. She asks 3 questions. He answers them. She says she will have a preliminary assessment by noon. The second call is to a number he dials from memory. "Reyes," says a woman who answers. "I need a background search." Cole says, "Marcus Calloway. Domestic, last 4 years minimum. Financial activity connected to a business called Grounds Coffee, current ownership." A pause. "Yes, today if you can." He puts the phone down. He looks at Sarah, who has been watching him with a particular focused attention of someone building a picture from details. "Who is Reyes?" she says. "A federal agent." He says, "I have been cooperating with her office for 2 years. A beat. That," he says, "is part of the answer to your question." He tells her. He does not rush it, and he does not dress it up. He tells her about the network, what it was, what it moved, what it cost people he will not name, but has not forgotten. He tells her about the 11 years of building it and the moment 3 years ago when he sat in this hotel. In this building he had made legitimate from the ground up and understood that the version of himself he had constructed for survival had outlived the conditions that required it and was now simply a choice he was making every day by not unmaking it. He tells her about Agent Reyes and the cooperation agreement and the methodical 2-year process of dissolving the network piece by piece. He tells her he is not a good man in the way the word is used simply by people who have not had to make the specific calculations he has made. He tells her he is trying to become one in a way that counts, not in a way that looks good from outside, but in a way that can be examined from inside without looking away. He tells her all of it. He does not tell her the parts that would require her to carry information it is not safe to carry. But everything she asks, he answers. She listens the way she always listens. Fully, without interrupting, without the performed reactions that people produce when they want you to know they are listening. She just listens. And when he finishes, she is quiet for a moment. "You told me the truth when you did not have to," she says. "Yes. Marcus never told me the truth about anything." "I believe you," he says. They sit with that for a moment. "Why are you helping me?" she says. The real answer, not the coffee program. He looks at her for a long time. "I watched you walk to my lobby at 2 a.m, carrying the specific weight of someone who has been living in a room with no exits. I know what that looks like because I watched someone I loved carry it for years, and I was not old enough or strong enough to do anything about it." He pauses. "I am both of those things now." She holds his gaze. Something in the room shifts slightly, like a pressure change. "That is an honest answer," she says. "I do not have another kind." Agent Reyes calls at 11:40. Marcus Calloway has 2 prior domestic restraining orders, both from relationships before Sarah. Both settled quietly, one with financial agreement that included a non-disclosure clause that has kept it out of any public search. He has also, over the past 14 months, been running cash from an illegal gambling operation to the ground's coffee shop books, recording it as coffee shop revenue, clean and legitimate on paper, invisible unless you know what the actual revenue of a small independent coffee shop looks like and understand the discrepancy. Sarah, as the original owner of record, is a person of interest in any investigation that connects that activity to the business. Marcus had her sign the transfer not just to take the shop from her, though he wanted that too, but to move the legal exposure onto the new owner once the federal activity reached the shop, which it was going to. He was building himself an exit from the fraud at her expense before he even handed her the pen. Cole tells her all of this. He does not soften it, and he does not let her absorb just part of it. She needs to understand the full picture, because the full picture is what determines how fast they need to move. She listens. She does not look away. When he finishes, she is quiet for a long moment, and he watches her absorb it with the specific stillness of someone who's been waiting without knowing they were waiting for the full shape of something they only had partial information about. "He used my shop to launder money," she says. "Yes. He forced me to sign it over so the exposure would land on him and not me when it was discovered. That is the working theory." "Yes. He was going to let me be implicated. If you had still owned it when the investigation began." "Yes." She nods slowly. She looks at her coffee cup. She looks back at him. "I need an attorney," she says. "Sandra Park is already on it. She will call you directly at noon." A pause. "You were moving before I said yes." "I was moving because the situation required it, not because I was deciding for you." He meets her eyes. There is a difference. She looks at him for a long moment, and something in her face does the thing it does when she has landed on a decision. Not an expression exactly, just a settling, a small increase in the vertical of her posture that means she has found solid ground again. "Thank you," she says. "You do not need to thank me. I know I do not need to. I am choosing to." That evening, Marcus makes his next move. He contacts a local news outlet, a digital publication that runs human interest stories and does not ask too many questions if the story is compelling, and gives him a statement about his missing wife, a hotel that is harboring her against her will, and his desperate attempt to reach her and ensure her safety. He sends a tulip photograph from the lobby visit. The story runs online at 9 p.m. with a headline about a wife who vanished and a husband who is searching. Cole's attorney files an emergency injunction at 11:15. The coffee shop transfer challenge, citing absence of independent counsel and documented evidence of duress, is filed simultaneously. Both filings are on a judge's desk before midnight. Sarah reads a news story in her suite on her phone. She reads it twice. She puts the phone face down on the bedside table and lies on her back on a hotel bed and looks at the ceiling and thinks about a man who described himself as not a good man in the way the word is used simply, who told her the truth about everything, who moved before she asked and stopped before he overstepped, who said, "I believe you," in a tone that meant it was not the end of the sentence, but the beginning of everything that followed. She thinks about the distance between that and 4 years of a man who told her she was lucky. She closes her eyes. She sleeps through the night for the first time in longer than she can accurately remember. Stop right there. Marcus planted illegal money in Sarah's coffee shop and forced her to sign it over so SHE would take the fall. This man is pure evil. If your jaw just dropped, smash that like button and subscribe to Echoed True Stories, because we are not done with him yet. Drop a comment. Did you see this coming? Share this video right now. Next chapter is going to leave you in tears. The injunction holds. The judge reviews the coffee shop transfer documents on a Friday morning and finds what Sandra Park told Cole she would find: 3 procedural irregularities significant enough to constitute grounds for challenge. No independent counsel for the signing party. No cooling-off period between presentation and execution. A timeline, reconstructed from emails and the Attorney General's own billing records, that places a signer within 48 hours of a documented emergency room visit in Sarah's name for a wrist injury she reported as accidental. The transfer is voided. Ground belongs to Sarah again. The news outlet that ran Marcus's missing wife story runs a correction on Monday. By Wednesday, they have spoken to Sandra Park in Agent Reyes' office, and by Friday, they run a full piece. The prior restraining orders, the pattern, the financial activity, the transfer under duress. The story is thorough and sourced, and it does what thorough source stories do when they're about a man who has been performing decency for an audience. It removes the audience. Marcus Calloway is served on a Thursday morning in his own kitchen with 3 documents simultaneously. A restraining order, keeping him 1,000 feet from Sarah at all times. Divorce filing papers from Sandra Park's office. A federal inquiry notice from Agent Reyes' office regarding financial activities connected to Ground's coffee between the dates of the first cash deposit and the ownership transfer. He does not take it quietly. He makes calls. He applies pressure in the places where pressure has worked before. He contacts Gerald, who stops answering his calls within 24 hours because Gerald is a man who knows which way a situation is moving and moves accordingly. He contacts people who owe him favors and finds, one by one, that the favors were always contingent on his position, and his position is no longer what it was. The connections were built on performance, and performance requires an audience, and the audience is left. The financial fraud case moves to the federal system with the efficiency of cases where the evidence is clean and the cooperation of witnesses is straightforward. Marcus is charged, tried, and convicted. He receives 4 years. The physical abuse case is built on Sarah's testimony, on the emergency room record from the wrist visit, and on the file her doctor has been keeping since the second appointment. Every visit, every injury, every explanation that did not add up, dated and documented, and preserved in a medical file that becomes, in a courtroom, 18 months of evidence that no defense attorney can adequately address. Her doctor testifies. She is precise and she is devastating, and she does not look at Marcus once while she speaks. Marcus receives an additional 3 years, consecutive. He does not come back. Cole's cooperation agreement with Agent Reyes reaches its formal conclusion 4 months after the Marcus Calloway case closes. The network is dissolved, not dismantled in pieces, but formally concluded. The final operational elements handed over or shut down through the process that Cole and Reyes have been running together for 2 years. His legitimate businesses are restructured under a clean corporate entity. The federal file is closed with a letter that Cole reads once and then puts in a drawer. He does not frame it. He is not that kind of man. What he is, in the weeks that follow, is quieter than he expected. Not unhappy. The absence of the network is not a loss in the way he thought it might be. It is more like the specific quiet of a house after a loud guest is finally left, noticeable, and then restful, and then simply the way things are. He runs his hotels. He attends to the restaurant program, which is now genuinely excellent, which he notes in the monthly review, and attributes to the consulting work without elaborating on who did it. Sarah is no longer a hotel guest by the time the federal case closes. She left the Voss Grand 6 weeks after arriving, not because it was not safe, but because being safe in a place and building a life in a place are different things, and she was ready to build. She rents an apartment 12 blocks from grounds. She furnishes it herself, which takes 3 weeks and involves more trips to secondhand stores than strictly necessary, and results in a space that is completely and entirely hers. not curated for anyone else's comfort, not arranged with any eye toward anyone else's reaction. There's a reading chair by the window that is too large for the space, and she does not care. There's a coffee set up on the kitchen counter that is professionally calibrated, and her colleagues, when they visit, unanimously declare excessive. She does not care about that either. She and Cole have coffee together on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. This is not arranged formally. It begins because the restaurant program still requires periodic review, and periodic review requires her presence, and her presence requires coffee, and coffee requires him to be there. And after 6 weeks, it is simply what Tuesday and Thursday mornings are. Neither of them names it. Neither of them changes it. He tells her, on a Tuesday in November, about a decision he has been considering, a fifth hotel property, a smaller boutique space, different from the Voss Grand in character and intention. He talks about it with the specific tentativeness of someone describing something they care about and are not sure they have a right to care about that much. She listens. She asks 3 questions that go directly to the center of what he is uncertain about. He answers them. She says, "You should do it. You know how to build things." He looks at her. "So do you," he says. She considers this. "Yes," she says, "I do." Grounds reopens on a Saturday morning in March, 8 months after Sarah first walked into the Voss Grand in the rain. She does not make an announcement. She does not run a promotion. She unlocks the door at 7 a.m. and turns a sign to open and puts the first brew on. And by 7:15, Claire is at the counter asking for her oat milk latte and commenting that the new signage is cleaner than the old and that she was starting to worry. By 9, the regulars have found their way back the way regulars always do, through some combination of habit and loyalty and the specific gravitational pull of a place that knows what it is. The menu board has a new section at the bottom, a small note in Sarah's handwriting that reads, "Coffee Program Consulting, the Voss Grand." It is the kind of credit that most customers will not notice, and the one customer she wants to notice will. And when Cole walks through the door at 10:15 on the reopening morning, she watches his face find it from across the room. He does not mention it. He orders a coffee, her roast, her method, her extraction time, and he sits at the corner table by the window, and he drinks it in a way he holds everything, with both hands, without performance, just present. She brings her own cup and sits across from him. "Well," she says. He looks at the cup. He looks at her. "It is the best coffee I've ever had. It is the same coffee I made you the first morning." "I know," he says. "I have known since the first morning." She looks at him, and something in her face does the thing, the settling, the small vertical increase, the solid ground, and she reaches across the table and covers his hand with hers. He goes very still. It is the first time she has touched him outside of the professional context of the consulting work, the first time she has made the gesture, and he understands what it means because he has understood what she is for some time now and has been waiting, not impatiently, not calculating, just waiting the way you wait for something you believe in, for her to be ready. "I am not doing this because I owe you," she says. "I want to be clear about that." "I know," he says. "I have known that since you corrected my description of the roast profile on the second morning, and then caught yourself and pulled back." A pause. "I have been waiting for you to stop catching yourself." She looks at him. "That is a very patient thing to do. You were worth being patient for." She does not say anything for a moment. She looks at their hands on the table, and she thinks about a woman who walked out a front door at 2 in the morning with $412 and a change of clothes and no destination, and the first true decision she had made for herself in 4 years. She thinks about what that woman needed. She thinks about what she has now. "I am not easy," she says. "You are honest," he says. "That is the only thing I require. I am going to need things to be slow. I have nowhere to be. I am going to need to make my own decisions. I would not have it any other way." She looks at him for a long time. The morning moves around them, the sounds of grounds doing what it does, customers and coffee, and Claire at the counter telling someone that the oat milk latte here is the best in the city. The ordinary, beautiful noise of a place that belongs to the person who built it. "Okay," she says. They do not move fast. They do not perform their relationship for anyone. Not for staff at the Voss Grand who have noticed and said nothing. Not for Sander Park who asks once and is satisfied with a look. They build it the way Sarah builds coffee. with attention, with adjustment, with the specific patience of someone who knows that the right result requires the right process, and that rushing either produces something that looks correct but tastes of shortcuts. Cole learns as she cries at documentaries about animals and is embarrassed about this, and he finds it privately wonderful. She learns that he cannot fall asleep without reading for at least 20 minutes and keeps 3 books on the nightstand always, and she finds this privately wonderful too. He learns her without trying to fix her. She learns him without trying to simplify him. They are both, in their different ways, people who have been through things that most people do not have to be through, and they carry those things not as damage, but as a specific weight of having lived carefully and survived honestly. And they understand each other in a way that people who have done that kind of living understand each other, without explanation, without performance, just with a direct and steady recognition of people who are both, finally, in a room where all the exits are open on a quiet Sunday morning in April. 2 years after a rainy night and $412 and a note that said 8 words on hotel stationery, Cole sits across from Sarah in grounds before it opens. She is calibrating the espresso machine, a small adjustment, 2 minutes of focused attention, the kind of thing she does without thinking because it is a language her hands speak. The morning light comes through the window and lands on the counter, and she is in it, just present, just doing the thing she loves in a place that is hers. He watches her and thinks about 11 years of building the wrong things and 3 years of taking them apart, and a particular night 2 years ago when a woman walked through his lobby in the rain carrying $412 and the most intact dignity he had ever seen on a person who had been through what she had been through. He thinks about what she needed. He thinks about what he needed. He thinks that sometimes the thing you were working toward all along does not announce itself. It just walks through your door at 2 a.m. and corrects your description of a roast profile and pulls back, and then, when it is ready, when she is ready, reaches across the table and covers your hand with hers. He wraps both hands around his coffee cup. He looks at her in the morning light. He does not say any of this out loud, because some things do not need to be said to be completely, permanently true. Sarah looks up from the machine. She looks at him across the counter. She looks at the cup in his hands. She smiles. Not the performed version, not the armor version, just the real one, the one that is fully and entirely hers. Some exits lead somewhere worth arriving at. This one did. Thank you so much for watching this story on Echo True Stories. If Sarah and Cole's journey moved you today, smash that like button, subscribe to Echo True Stories, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that leaving is not the end. It is the beginning of the life you were always supposed to build. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What was the moment you knew Cole was different from every man Sarah had known? We read every single comment. See you in the next story. Do not go anywhere.